The year was 2387 and humans had been flying around space with aliens for 50 years. That might sound like a long time, but compared to other species who had been doing this for thousands of years, humans were still the new kids on the block. Captain Jake Morrison stood on the bridge of his ship, the UHS Defiant. It was one of the first human ships to work alongside alien vessels in what they called the Galactic Federation. Jake was a tough guy from Texas, with gray hair and steady hands. He had fought in Earth's last war before they joined the Space Club, and now he was learning how aliens fought their battles. His crew was good people. Lieutenant Amy Brooks handled the weapons and tactics. She was smart as a whip and came from California. Sergeant Pete Collins ran the Marines, a bunch of tough soldiers ready for anything. Pete was from Boston and talked like it. Above them all was Admiral Zethkar, a big lizard-like alien from a species called the Vorthak. The Admiral had green scales and yellow eyes that never seemed to blink. He thought humans were strange, but useful, like a tool he wasn't sure how to use properly. The Galactic Federation had rules for everything, especially fighting. When species had problems with each other, they didn't just start shooting. They had formal procedures, like a very deadly game with strict rules. Wars were planned out with limited goals and agreed-upon ways to surrender. It was all very civilized, but now there was trouble brewing. A group called the Hegemony of Kralthon had broken away from the Federation. They were bug-like creatures with hard shells and nasty attitudes. They had taken over 3 star systems that belonged to the Federation, and according to galactic law that meant war. Jake sat in the briefing room with officers from 6 different alien species. The room smelled like a mix of different atmospheres pumped in to keep everyone breathing comfortably. Some aliens sat in chairs, others floated in tanks, and one hung from the ceiling like a bat. "The rules are simple," explained Commander Veltar, a blue-skinned alien with tentacles instead of arms. "We challenge them to battle. They accept. We fight until one side reaches the casualty limit. Then the loser surrenders. Clean and honorable." Amy raised her hand. "What's the casualty limit?" "Usually around 12% fleet losses," Veltar replied. "Sometimes 15 if both sides agree beforehand." Pete looked confused. "You mean the fight stops when you lose 12 ships out of 100? "Of course. Why would you continue fighting after that? The outcome would be clear." Jake and his crew exchanged glances. On Earth, battles didn't stop because you lost some people. They stopped when one side couldn't fight anymore or when someone achieved their objective completely. "What about supply lines?" Amy asked. "Do we target their fuel depots and supply ships?" The room went quiet. Several aliens made sounds that their translators turned into gasps of shock. "Absolutely not," said Admiral Zethkar, his voice deep and rumbling. "Supply vessels are civilian. We fight military to military with honor. But if you cut off their supplies, the war ends faster," Pete pointed out. "Fewer people die overall." "That is not how civilized beings conduct warfare," replied a floating, jellyfish-like creature. "We fight to prove superiority, not to cause suffering." Jake kept his mouth shut, but he was thinking hard. Back on Earth, if someone attacked your country, you hit them with everything you had until they stopped being a threat. You didn't play games or follow fancy rules that let your enemy keep fighting. The briefing continued with discussions of proper battle formations, acceptable weapons, and formal surrender procedures. The aliens talked about war like it was a sport with referees. Jake had fought in wars where the goal was simple: win or die trying. After the meeting, Jake's crew gathered in their ship's mess hall. The food was standard human fare, not the weird alien stuff served in the Federation cafeteria. "This is nuts," Pete said, stirring his coffee. "They fight wars like it's some kind of tournament." "Makes sense from their perspective," Amy replied. "If you've got thousands of years of civilization, you probably want to keep wars from getting too destructive." Jake nodded slowly. "Maybe, but what happens when they face an enemy who doesn't follow their rules?" 3 days later, they got their answer. The Hegemony responded to the Federation's formal challenge with their own message. Instead of the usual polite acceptance of battle terms, they sent a recording of their General Vextar, a massive insect creature with razor-sharp claws. "We do not accept your weak Federation rules," the alien hissed through the translator. "We will take what we want and crush anyone who stands in our way." The Federation commanders were shocked. In 3,000 years of galactic warfare, no one had ever rejected the established protocols. They called emergency meetings and consulted ancient law books, trying to figure out what to do when an enemy wouldn't play by the rules. Jake watched all this with growing unease. He had seen this before back on Earth. Sometimes you faced an enemy who didn't care about honor or rules or civilized behavior. When that happened, you had two choices: adapt to their level of fighting or lose everything you cared about. The Federation fleet moved toward hegemony space, still trying to conduct a civilized war against an enemy who had already thrown civilization out the window. Jake had a bad feeling about how this was going to end. As the UHS Defiant joined the battle formation, Jake couldn't shake the feeling that his alien allies were about to learn a harsh lesson about the difference between playing war and fighting one. The Federation fleet reached Zarian Prime 3 weeks after the failed negotiations. It was supposed to be a simple battle, the kind the galaxy had seen hundreds of times before. Two fleets would face each other in space, exchange formal challenges, and fight until one side hit their casualty limit. Then everyone would shake hands, sign papers, and go home. Jake Morrison watched from his captain's chair as the alien ships arranged themselves in perfect battle formations. Everything was neat and orderly, like pieces on a chessboard. The Federation had 47 ships and the Hegemony had 42. According to the rules, they would fight until one side lost about 6 ships, then call it quits. Admiral Zethkar's voice came over the communications system, speaking to the entire fleet. "Remember, we fight with honor today. Target military, vessels only. No pursuit of retreating enemies. Victory through superior tactics, not destruction." The other ships acknowledged the orders in their various alien languages. Jake just said, "Understood, Admiral," and wondered what would happen when honor met an enemy who didn't believe in it. The battle started exactly as predicted. Both fleets moved into position like they were following a dance everyone had memorized. Ships fired at each other from respectful distances, scoring hits that damaged but rarely destroyed. It was almost polite. General Vextar, the bug-like hegemony commander, appeared on the main screen for the traditional mid-battle exchange of threats and compliments. His insect face was hard to read, but something in his compound eyes made Jake nervous. "Your formation is adequate, Federation fools," Vextar hissed, "but we will prove our superiority through proper combat." Admiral Zethkar replied with the usual formal response about honor and duty. Jake tuned it out and focused on his tactical display. Something was bothering him about the enemy formation, but he couldn't put his finger on what. Amy Brooks, his weapons officer, was frowning at her screen. "Captain, the hegemony ships are moving closer than usual. That's not standard battle distance." "Maybe they're changing tactics," Pete Collins suggested from his position near the Marine station. Jake studied the display more carefully. The bug ships were indeed moving closer, but they were also doing something else. Their engine signatures were changing, like they were charging up for something big. "Admiral," Jake called over the comm, "the hegemony formation is..." He never got to finish his warning. The hegemony ships suddenly broke formation and accelerated directly toward the Federation fleet. Outfiring their weapons, not maneuvering for better position, just coming straight at them like missiles. "They're ramming," Amy shouted. "All ships, they're going for ramming attacks." The Federation fleet was caught completely off guard. In 3,000 years of civilized warfare, no one had ever tried ramming attacks. It was considered barbaric, wasteful, and against every rule of engagement. The first hegemony ship hit Admiral Zethkar's flagship head-on. Both vessels exploded in a ball of fire that lit up space for millions of miles. The Admiral, his command, staff, and over 800 crew members died instantly. 3 more ramming attacks followed in quick succession. Federation ships designed for elegant long-range combat had no defense against enemies willing to die just to cause damage. Within 10 minutes, the Federation had lost 4 major vessels and their entire command structure. The surviving Federation ships panicked. Without clear leadership and facing tactics that violated every rule they knew, They began to retreat. Ship after ship turned away from the battle and headed for safe space. "All ships, withdraw to minimum safe distance," ordered Lieutenant Commander Rayteen from the Andromedan cruiser Harmony. He was the highest-ranking officer left alive. "We need to regroup and contact the Federation Council for new orders." Jake stared at his screen in disbelief. The aliens were running away after losing 4 ships. Back on Earth, losing 4 ships would make you mad, not make you quit. "HS, Defiant, you will comply with retreat order." Rayteen's voice came over. The Jake was about to acknowledge when his communications officer, Lisa Park, grabbed his arm. Lisa was a young woman from Ohio with sharp ears and sharper instincts. "Captain, I'm picking up a distress signal. Federation frequency, very weak. Put it through." The voice that came through the speakers was human, which surprised everyone. "This is Captain Dan Murphy of the Federation transport vessel Hope. We're disabled near Xerion Prime's moon. Life support failing. 47 souls aboard, including Federation medical personnel and engineers." Jake felt something cold settle in his stomach. A Federation ship was stranded in enemy territory with people dying, and the fleet was retreating to have meetings about it. "Hope, this is Captain Morrison. What's your status?" "We took damage from debris when the flagship exploded. Engines are gone. Life support has maybe 6 hours left. The bugs have us surrounded, but they're not shooting. I think they want to take us prisoner." Rayteen's voice cut across the channel. "UHS Defiant, you will withdraw immediately. Rescue operations will be negotiated through proper diplomatic channels." Jake looked around his bridge. Amy was staring at him with wide eyes. Pete was standing at attention, waiting for orders. Lisa had her hand hovering over the communication controls. "Captain Murphy, hold tight. Help is coming." "Morrison." Rayteen's voice was sharp with anger. "You will comply with retreat orders." Jake stood up from his captain's chair and walked to the communication station. When he spoke, his voice was calm and clear, but everyone on the bridge could hear the steel underneath. "Negative, Harmony. We don't leave our people behind." He nodded to Lisa, who cut the channel to the retreating Federation fleet. Then Jake turned to his crew. "Amy, plot a course for Xerion Prime's moon. Pete, get your Marines ready. We're going to get our people back." The UHS Defiant broke formation and headed straight into enemy territory. Behind them, the rest of the Federation fleet continued their retreat, following protocols that had worked for thousands of years. They had no idea they were about to witness something the galaxy had never seen before. Humans fighting a real war. The UHS Defiant flew alone through space toward Xerion Prime's moon. Behind them, the Federation fleet was getting smaller and smaller as they retreated to safety. Ahead of them waited an unknown number of enemy ships and 47 people who would die if nobody helped them. Jake Morrison stood on his bridge and felt something he hadn't felt since the old wars on Earth. It was a cold, focused anger that made everything crystal clear. These bug aliens had killed Admiral Zethkar and hundreds of good people with a coward's attack. Now they were holding Federation personnel prisoner, while diplomats talked about proper procedures. "Captain," Amy Brooks called from her weapons station. "I count 12 hegemony ships around the moon. They've got the transport vessel Hope surrounded, but they're not shooting at it. They want prisoners for negotiations," Jake said. "That's fine. We'll give them something to negotiate about." Pete Collins was studying the tactical display with his Marines gathered around him. "Sir, 12-to-1 odds. That's not great." Jake smiled, but it wasn't a friendly expression. "Pete, those odds assume we're going to fight fair." The first lesson humans had learned about space combat was that the aliens fought like gentlemen. They announced their attacks, used predictable formations, and never hit anything their enemy wasn't expecting. It worked fine when everyone followed the same rules. Jake had no intention of following their rules. "Lisa, open a channel to the hegemony commander." The bug face of Captain Zektor appeared on screen. Like all his species, he looked like a giant praying mantis with armor plating. His translator made his voice sound cold and mechanical. "Human. Vessel. You will withdraw immediately or be destroyed. This area is under hegemony control. This is Captain Morrison. You're holding Federation personnel prisoner. Release them now, and we'll talk. Zektor made a sound that might have been laughter. You are one small ship against 12. Surrender now, and we will treat you according to galactic conventions. Jake looked at Amy and nodded. She had been working on something special while they flew toward the moon. Tell you what, Bug Boy, let's see how you handle this. The channel closed. A second later, every sensor on every hegemony ship went crazy at once. Amy had launched what looked like 50 different ships from the Defiant, all broadcasting strong signals and moving in different directions. Sensor decoys, Amy explained calmly. Made them from spare parts and old food containers. Each one looks like a Federation cruiser to their scanners. The hegemony ships panicked. Suddenly, they thought they were facing a huge fleet instead of one small human vessel. They broke formation and started chasing false targets, trying to figure out which signals were real. While they were distracted, Jake took the Defiant behind Zarian Prime's moon, using the satellite's magnetic field to hide their real position. It was a trick he had learned fighting pirates in the asteroid belt before joining the Federation. Pete, you ready? The Marine sergeant grinned. Been ready since we left Earth, sir. The Defiant came around the moon's far side like a ghost, invisible to enemy sensors. Before the hegemony ships knew what was happening, Jake had positioned his vessel right next to their largest cruiser. Go, go, go. Pete Collins and 20 Marines launched themselves through space in combat suits, carrying weapons and explosives that would have made the Federation Council faint with horror. They didn't politely ask permission to board the enemy ship. They blasted holes in the hull and fought their way inside like pirates. The hegemony crew had never faced boarding action before. In civilized warfare, you didn't board enemy ships. You fought at a distance with respect and honor. Pete's Marines fought like wolves in a chicken coop. Within 30 minutes, they had captured the entire cruiser. The bug aliens, trained for formal duels and elegant maneuvers, had no idea how to fight humans who used improvised explosives, fought in zero gravity, and treated every battle like their lives depended on it. Ship secure, Captain, Pete reported, over the comm. These bugs fight like they're afraid of getting their uniforms dirty. Jake used the captured cruiser as a base to attack the other hegemony ships. Instead of formal challenges and predictable maneuvers, he hit them from unexpected directions. When they tried to surround him, he used the moon's gravity to slingshot around their formations. When they followed their training and maintained formation, he picked them off one by one. Amy coordinated the rescue of the Federation transport, while Jake kept the enemy busy. She didn't just extract the 47 people from the Hope. While she was there, she discovered 2 other Federation ships that had been captured earlier, with their crews being held prisoner. Captain, I found 63 more Federation personnel on the other ships, Amy reported. Looks like the bugs have been collecting prisoners for weeks. Get them all, Jake ordered. And Amy, download everything from their computers while you're at it. This was another thing that shocked the hegemony. Humans didn't just rescue their people and leave. They took intelligence data, disabled enemy, equipment, and made sure the enemy couldn't cause more problems later. By the time Jake was done, the local hegemony fleet was scattered across the solar system. 3 ships were captured, 4 were disabled, and the rest were running for their lives. The entire operation took 4 hours and 17 minutes. When the Federation reinforcements finally arrived, they found the UHS Defiant calmly transferring rescued personnel to medical ships. Captain Dan Murphy of the Transport Hope was alive and well, along with all 110 Federation personnel who had been taken prisoner. The hegemony commander, General Vextar, sent a message to the Federation Council. That same day, it was short and simple. What are these humans and how do we make them stop? Jake sat in his captain's chair and watched the Federation ships arrive. They moved in perfect formations, following procedures that were thousands of years old. They had no idea that everything had just changed. The humans had shown the galaxy what real war looked like. Not the polite civilized conflicts the aliens were used to, but the kind of desperate total warfare that had shaped humanity since they first picked up sticks and stones to defend their caves. The Federation Council was going to have some very serious questions for Captain Jake Morrison. But first, They had to figure out what to do with a species that treated every fight like the survival of their civilization depended on it. 3 weeks after the Xerion incident, Captain Jake Morrison found himself sitting in the biggest courtroom he had ever seen. The Federation Council chamber was a massive dome that could hold representatives from hundreds of different species. Today, it felt like they were all staring at him. Jake wore his best uniform, the one with all the medals from Earth's old wars. Next to him sat Commander Beth Taylor, humanity's representative to the Federation Military Council. She was a smart woman from New York who usually handled the political side of things. Today she looked nervous. Across from them sat 12 judges from 12 different alien species. Some had tentacles, some had scales, and one looked like a floating cloud of gas. They all had one thing in common. They were scared of humans. The chief judge was a tall, thin alien called a Zenthari. His name was Judge Keth Allen, and his voice sounded like wind through a tunnel when he spoke. Captain Morrison, you stand accused of violating the Galactic War Crimes Convention, specifically the articles regarding excessive force, unauthorized tactics, and conduct unbecoming of a civilized species. Jake almost laughed. Back on Earth, saving 110 people and defeating 12 enemy ships without losing a single person would get you a medal and a parade. Out here in space, it got you put on trial. How do you answer these charges? The judge continued. Jake stood up slowly. He had thought about this moment for weeks, wondering what he would say to a room full of aliens who thought war was a game. Your Honor, I followed my duty as a Federation officer. I protected Federation personnel and defeated an enemy force that threatened them. If that's a crime, then I guess I'm guilty. The courtroom erupted in whispers and strange alien sounds. Several species made noises that the translators couldn't handle, which usually meant they were either very angry or very scared. Judge Keith Allen raised one of his forearms for silence. Captain, you violated every established protocol for civilized warfare. Your actions were unprecedented. Unprecedented but effective, Commander Taylor interjected, standing up beside Jake. The captain saved 110 Federation lives and neutralized a significant enemy threat. A judge who looked like a giant octopus spoke up. Commander Taylor, effectiveness is not the issue. The issue is that human military doctrine appears to be incompatible with galactic civilization. That's when Beth Taylor said something that would be quoted in history books for the next 1,000 years. You're right, she said simply. It is incompatible, because we don't fight wars to prove points or show off. We fight to win and we fight to protect our people. When someone threatens what we care about, we don't calculate acceptable losses or plan honorable defeats. We eliminate the threat completely. The silence in the courtroom was so complete you could hear the air recyclers humming. Judge Keith Allen leaned forward. Commander, are you saying that humans do not accept the concept of limited warfare? I'm saying that humans don't understand it, Beth replied. On Earth, we fought wars where the survival of our entire species was at stake. We learned that half measures get people killed. When we fight to end the threat permanently. A judge that looked like a tree with eyes asked the question everyone was thinking. What exactly does human military doctrine include? Beth pulled out a data pad and began reading. Asymmetric warfare, psychological operations, resource denial, strategic bombing, unconditional surrender, and total war doctrine. With each term, more aliens made sounds of distress. Jake could see some of them physically backing away from the human section of the courtroom. Could you explain total war for the court? Judge Keth Allen asked, though he sounded like he didn't really want to know. Total war means you use every resource and method available to defeat your enemy, Beth explained. You target their ability to fight, their will to fight, and their capacity to support the war effort. You continue until they surrender unconditionally or until they can no longer pose a threat. The gas cloud judge made a sound like a steam leak. That is barbaric. Jake finally spoke up. It's survival. On Earth, we've faced extinction dozens of times. Ice ages, supervolcanoes, plagues, wars that could have ended civilization. We learned that when something threatens your existence, you don't fight fair. You fight to win. But surely, said the octopus judge, civilized beings can resolve conflicts without such extremes. Tell that to Admiral Zethkar, Jake replied quietly. Oh wait, you can't. Because the hegemony killed him with a ramming attack that violated every rule of civilized warfare. The courtroom fell silent again. Several judges exchanged glances, with expressions that their species used to show worry. Over the next 3 days, the trial continued. The Federation learned things about humans that made them very uncomfortable. They discovered that human military academies taught courses on fighting in every possible environment, from underwater cities to zero-gravity factories. They learned that humans studied the psychology of 47 different alien species, looking for weaknesses they could exploit in combat. The final straw came when the prosecution revealed that humans had something called contingency plans for fighting every major power in the galaxy, including their own Federation allies. You have plans to fight us? Judge Kethallen asked in shock. We have plans to fight everyone, Jake admitted. It's called being prepared. Hope for the best, plan for the worst. That night, the judges deliberated for 18 hours. When they returned, Judge Kethallen looked like he had aged a decade. After careful consideration, this court has reached a decision. Captain Morrison, you are hereby cleared of all charges. Your actions, while unconventional, were effective and saved. Federation lives. Jake smiled, thinking he had won. However, the judge continued, this court also rules that human military doctrine represents a paradigm that is fundamentally incompatible with civilized galactic warfare. Therefore, humans are hereby banned from participating in future military conflicts. The courtroom exploded into chaos. Jake shot to his feet. You're punishing us for being too good at protecting people? We are protecting the galaxy from a species that treats every conflict as an existential threat, Judge Kethallen replied sadly. Your effectiveness is precisely the problem. Commander Taylor stood up slowly. Your Honor, are you saying that humans are too dangerous to fight alongside? We are saying that humans are too dangerous to fight against, the judge corrected. This is not punishment. This is precaution. Within a week, the news had spread across the galaxy. Humans were banned from galactic wars not because they were bad at fighting, but because they were too good at it. The human military was reorganized into peacekeeping and emergency response forces, officially restricted from combat operations. But something interesting happened after that. The hegemony of Kralthon immediately requested peace negotiations. Within a month, they had agreed to return all captured territory and pay reparations. Other hostile factions across the galaxy suddenly became much more interested in diplomatic solutions, because now everyone knew the truth about humans. They didn't fight wars for glory or territory or political advantage. They fought like the survival of everything they cared about depended on winning. And that terrified the galaxy more than any weapon ever could. Jake Morrison returned to Earth as a hero, the man who was too dangerous to fight wars. He didn't mind. Sometimes the greatest victory was making sure nobody ever wanted to fight you in the first place.